Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown between the forces of the Dawi, led by Sergeant Spaghetti himself, up against Emperor Deathclaw and his Dark Elf legions. Should be a really fun game. So let's pop this into slow-mo and very quickly go through the build. So it's going to be a very interesting approach from the Dark Elves. However, the Dawi build is a really solid competitive pick. In the front line, we have miners with blasting charges. Personally, I like them in a secondary line to ensure they get all their blasting charges off. However, these guys can get some fantastic value. Their blasting charges tear through bleak swords, dread spears, and the like, really helping clear through the chaff of the Dark Elves very quickly. In the secondary line, we have Dwarf Warriors with great weapons that add a little bit more punch to the build. And then we have an absolute ton of gun and bow fire. We have Rangers on the flank. Looks like they are going to be protecting a couple units of Quarrelers as well, with great weapons, no less. And a ton of Thunderers in this centre pocket. Now this build, very good for taking down enemy chariots. You wait for the enemy chariots to pop in, they try to shut down one unit of Thunderers, and you simply get the crossfire with all the other elements of your build. You know, crossbowmen, more Thunderers, and the like. We also have a double cannon in the back line to try and shut down enemy chariots, Scourge Runner play. We also have Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, over on the right-hand flank, coming in with his flash bomb to slow down enemy skirmishers who do come in for that assault. Looks like we also have a sneaky unit of Iron Drakes over here on the left-hand side. A unit I'm a big fan of. They're kind of hard to use as their firing arc isn't particularly fantastic, but they do a lovely discouragement ability, if we look down here, which gives -8 leadership to the enemy for 10 seconds, which is actually really quite powerful and potent. So overall, really impressive, solid Dawi build. Now for the forces here of the Dark Elves, it's got a little bit stranger. So we have Quad Reaper Bolt Throwers, which is certainly a viable tactic, trying to outshoot the Dawi forces and force them to come to you, close them down, and then out-skirmish them with the rest of the forces, which does include a ton of bleak swords in the front line. These guys are pretty much here to die. He's had to go very cheerfully cheap here in the front line because he's put so much money into these Reaper Bolt Throwers, and he needs to protect them here to get correct value. We do have Lokir Fellheart down here as well. Looks like he did take a cannonball early on to the face, but he's not going to be too mad about that, as of course he does have regeneration when he's in combat. He's also brought the dreaded Duelist. Should be able to go toe-to-toe reasonably well with most Dawi Lords. We have a Sorcerer, a Beast here, Manticore Summon, and Wyson Wild Form. Manticore Summon going to be particularly useful. And then we have a ton of skirmish potential. Double Shades over there on the far side, as well as 2 on this right-hand flank. Shades have great armor-piercing values, and of course Stalk, so they can get in there and do the dirty work on those elite Dawi troops if they can get in range. We have double Dark Riders in the back, as well as another Dark Rider unit all the way over on the far side. So Dark Elves going for a weird hybrid here between skirmish and artillery base. It's going to be interesting to see if they can protect these bolt throwers. Now the Dwarfs are making a decision here, kind of on the point snap decision by the general to abandon his cannons and force forward to try and shut down the enemy. And I am actually a big fan of this approach here. He knows the cannons are going to go down to the bolt throwers. He can do a little bit of damage, but he needs to close the distance as quickly as possible. So I think sacrificing his war machines kind of to the open here is actually a very good play. And if the riders want to go in for that, that's fine. At least it protects his other units. But it looks like the Dark Elves, again, making a pretty wise choice, knowing the artillery game is won. They're going to be darting down on top of these Rangers and Iron Drakes, trying to shut them down all in the back line. But the front line going much better for the Dwarfs. You can see those blasts and charges have done huge damage. Miners even pushing around through this left-hand flank, and Dwarf Warriors with weapons will quite comfortably be able to chew through the front line of bleak swords here, with grunts and many oaths being sworn. A lovely Manticore Summoner has gone up, pressuring into the back line, trying to shut down the Thunderers, as Dark Riders have been finished off with glorious crossfire, which is something we spoke about at the start of the battle. Same as if chariots come in, you just try and crossfire them with overwhelming fire superiority. Now the Shades have gotten into range, and we have a bit of a Ranger versus Shades off here. Now Rangers, big fan of these guys. They're pretty fast for Dwarfs, so they are shielded as well, but the armor piercing of the Shades is doing huge damage here, and these guys are really starting to struggle. However, Quarrelers are doing a bit of counter skirmish, but it's certainly going well for the Dark Elves on the right hand side. On the left, however, it's a little bit more tit for tat, with a mixture again of Rangers coming in and doing decent damage to Shades overall, though it looks like the Iron Drakes have been forced down, and the backline for the Dwarfs is in pretty big disarray at this point. However, in the front lines, we can see miners have pushed through onto the bolt throwers. Now, at this point, what the Dark Elf player needs to do is take his crewmen and take them off their war machines and flee for their lives. Because if they do stay here and fight miners, they're simply going to die pushing the balance power even more in favour of the Dwarfs, or in this case back to the middle, as currently the Dark Elves are in the ascendancy, but it could be due to the fact they do have a summoned Manticore on the field, who's currently feasting on some miners, as the White Dwarf currently untouched, although he hasn't got into the action too much himself just yet. Shades doing fantastic work overall, certainly tearing through some of these dwarf units, but once again the superior fire kind of numbers, I suppose, by the dwarfs, as the Quarrelers and Rangers really show their worth, and those bolt throwers, or crossbows, sorry, certainly whittling down these Shades, forcing them on the back foot and into an early retreat here. On the other flank though, Shades are doing pretty good, up to 46 and 38 kills each, and now feasting on the Thunderers, and the game's certainly getting pretty close overall. Miners in the back line are tearing through the bolt throwers, doing very good work here, and some Dwarf Warriors are even joining them as well now. Lokiel Felthart has popped all his buffs, but he's going toe-to-toe with one of the greatest warriors in the Total War universe, Grombrindal here, who has popped a flash bomb here, slowing down Loki and lowering his melee defense, and Loki is certainly having the business dealt in here. Many grudges are being satisfied as the axe does start to cleave him in two, but he's not going down without a fight. Of course, he is a dreaded duelist, so he should do pretty good there. The bolt throws are all pretty much gone now at this point. Balance power is back in the centre, and it's really the Shades holding things together at the moment for the Dark Elves. They're doing a fantastic job on this flank, pushing back Quarrelers, Thunderers, anything that comes near. And on the other side, they're doing equally good. They lost a lot of numbers themselves. They have managed to rout Rangers and Quarrelers all across the field. One problem they are going to have is ammunition is starting to dwindle a little bit, and there is a lot of Dwarf Warriors left on the field here. Loki has been felled here, or not fully felled yet, he is running for the hills, but has been pushed back by the White Dwarf, who charges after him very victoriously. He's not going to be able to catch him, however, so he probably just wants to turn around and help engage the main fight. Balance power now swinging heavily in the Dwarves' favour, as all the bolt thrower crews do start to run as well. And this could force army losses, which would be a bit unfortunate, as there is a ton of Shades still active, with some ammunition, certainly enough to clear up the Quarrelers and Thunderers in the back pocket, and then perhaps go toe-to-toe with some of the more beat-up units of the Dwarfs. But at this point, with the White Dwarf so healthy and some great weapon troops still been around, I think they would end up struggling. The Sorcerer of Beasts here is completely surrounded by miners, which, they're not going to be able to take it down very quickly, but again, she's still a wizard, so eventually she will be dragged down by those constant pickaxes. And Shade's now starting to run out of ammunition, which will affect the balance of power quite drastically. A lot of people don't seem to know that ammunition is kind of taken into account with the balance of power. And as they do kind of fire their last shots into these Thunderers, it's going to be moving the balance power further and further in favour of the Dawi here. Shades are pushing into combat now, hunting down the cannon crews and Thunderers crews, doing a pretty decent job, but it is just the Shades versus the world at this point. Loki has managed to rally over in the distance, but I'm assuming, yeah, he's going to be popping at Foe Seeker and very wisely hiding behind a rock instead of fighting the White Dwarf. Personally, I don't blame him. The White Dwarf is a very angry fellow, and Loki is a very beat-up Dark Elf right here. Although it looks like somehow Grombrindal is catching him. I suppose he's got his little charge animation going, perhaps. But yeah, he shouldn't be able to catch him. But a glorious smoke bomb actually comes down, slowing down Felthart. And this is the power of the White Dwarf, and why I think he's a little bit more competitive than people give him credit for. And he comes in here with his mighty axe, and Loki simply is not going to have the stomach for this fight. And with one or two big cleaves from his axe, Loki Felthart is going to be routing. Grombrindal decides he's not even worth his time to chase. And with that, it is going to be a Pyrrhic victory to the forces of the Dawi. Very well played to both players. Two different battle philosophies there, and some really interesting builds. Massive shout out to Sergeant Spaghetti for winning this one, and sending in the replay to me via my Discord. Now, before we do get into a little bit of analysis and so forth, just a quick reminder, guys, we do in fact have a stream today, starting in about an hour from when this is posted. It's going to be a really fun King of the Hill, celebrating all the people who have watched and subscribed to my channel over the last... I suppose the entire time my channel's been alive, with some giveaways and stuff, just as a kind of side, or like way of me giving back to you guys for all the kind of time and stuff you've invested in the channel. So yeah, feel free to go check that out. But anyway, back to this main battle. Emperor Deathclaw's build was pretty cool, honestly. The Shades did ridiculous amounts of work, and the quad bolt thrower can do pretty good here. However, I think because he only had some very kind of cheap bleak swords protecting that front line, they managed to get overwhelmed relatively quickly, and he spent most of the ammunition focusing down the cannons, which I don't think were the biggest threats in this Dawi build. As for Sergeant Spaghetti, really good judgment call right at the start, just to go headlong after those bolt throws, abandon your cannons. They still do a bit of damage, and it's not worth trying to sit back and kind of defend them or leave units in reserve to protect them against Dark Riders and so forth. He needs to overwhelm that Dark Elf front line, which he did manage to do, mainly down or partly due to the blasting charges, which did some really fantastic work. And then he held the back line as well. Rangers bravely given their lives to hold off the Shades as long as possible to allow the main part of the force to push forward, overrun the Dark Elves, and allow Grombrindle to do his work. Anyway guys, I hope you did enjoy. If you did, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Total War Warhammer content. And until next time guys, peace, and as always, stay awesome.